Welcome to the Abundiculture channel. The Bible provides pathways to abundance. God is pleased when we succeed abundantly and share generously. Abundiculture uses the family homestead as a platform to provide 5 basic needs: affordable housing, renewable energy, clean water, healthy food, and safe sanitation. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out our abundiculture.org website and download our free training manual. Today we want to show you how we make compost here on our homestead. How does composting work? Organic material is filled with millions of microbes, tiny living organisms. Some microbes are harmless and some can make you sick. In the compost pile, the good microbes overwhelm the bad microbes. What's left is clean compost that provides nutrients for the creation of more organic material. It's an endless cycle that supports life. We grow all of our vegetables in 100% compost. God has designed a wonderful system. We pray that the following presentation will be helpful to you. An enclosure makes the composting process neater. A 3-sided enclosure works well. Ours is made of concrete blocks. Wooden pallets also work well. See pages 178 and 179 in our Abundiculture training manual for more enclosure ideas. We choose ingredients that will make compost that will increase our garden yields. We want more food with less work. Here's a list of our ingredients. 1. Table scraps without meat. Meat takes a long time to compost. Number 2. Sawdust and human waste from our composting toilets. Our toilets use sawdust, but you can use any high-carbon material like peanut shells, ground corn cobs, shredded leaves, etc. The material needs to be the consistency of confetti for absorbency. Number 3. Old compost. Use old compost to cover the new material on the pile. This helps eliminate odors and insects. Number 4. Biochar. That's a fancy word for charcoal. We use charcoal from our wood stove. No ashes, just charcoal. This helps create mycorrhizal fungi, which helps plants to process nitrogen. Number 5. Shredded leaves. If the leaves aren't shredded, they mat down and make a stinking mess. Leaves provide important minerals from deep in the ground for our plants. Number 6. In the United States, I avoid animal manures because they are often contaminated with Roundup and other weed killers. Roundup will destroy your garden. As a substitute, I use lawn fertilizer without weed killers. I use about a half a cup each time I add materials to the compost pile. Here's how we mix our composting materials. We start with 6 or 8 inches of dry old compost that will absorb moisture and start the composting process. Add your components in layers of 1 or 2 inches, kind of like lasagna. Then cover the fresh materials with old compost or shredded leaves or garden refuse. Building your compost pile is like baking a cake. Sorry about that word picture. You mix certain ingredients in a certain way. Then you let it bake. Your compost pile will create heat up to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. That's part of the process that makes clean, safe compost. Your compost recipe will have the following components: moisture, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and time. Let's look at each one. Moisture. The contents of our composting toilets contains urine. The urine usually provides enough moisture. We rarely have to add any water. If you live in a desert, you may have to add water. The compost pile should be just a little damp, never dripping wet. If it's too wet, it will turn into a stinking mess. If it does, just add some carbon material, old hay, old compost, shredded leaves, etc., until the pile is just a little damp. Oxygen. Oxygen will be present throughout your compost pile. If the pile gets too compacted or too wet, it won't have enough oxygen and it will start to smell. In that case, you'll have to stir the pile with a shovel or a fork and add some carbon material. In 19 years, I have only had to stir the pile once due to bad odor. If you are in a rainy place, you may need to cover your compost pile with a tarp. Nitrogen. Nitrogen is present in table scraps and fertilizer. Your garden plants need lots of nitrogen. If you add too much nitrogen to the pile, it will start to stink. Just add more carbon if that happens. You can see that carbon is your friend. It will make up about 2/3 of your compost. I keep a big pile of old compost and shredded leaves right next to the pile so that I can sprinkle it over the pile whenever I add new ingredients to the pile. The carbon will help keep away insects and odors. There's one more necessary and important ingredient to successful composting, and that is time. Many people don't want to compost human waste because they fear it will make them sick. If you don't give your compost enough time, any compost will make you sick. You must give your compost 1 year to cure, not 1 minute less. If you are careless or you try to take shortcuts, you will contaminate your garden. When my compost bin is full, I make a marker that tells me when the compost can be used safely, 1 year from the last deposit placed on the pile. When we don't compost human waste, we are throwing away a valuable resource. In many places I've traveled, all the topsoil has been blown or washed away. Without compost, there will not be enough food in that place. Composting toilets are the answer to rebuilding soils and providing clean, safe water. Composting is a gift from God that will help provide more food with less work, and it will help provide clean water. Check out pages 164 through 183 in our training manual for more information about composting. I hope you can start your compost pile today. Well, keep your hands in the garden and your eyes on Jesus.
We're all in a master plan, though the things we do are just grains of sand. When these things are touched by the Master's hand, then our lives turn into mountains.